Clair Obscur Expedition 33 released recently, and having not watched any sort of trailer or having any idea what the game was or what it was about, I decided to play it. And I can tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. Since I've been used to the consistent overpriced slop, the first few hours of this game made me happy that I spent my time on it. So, here are my first impressions. Let's talk about the graphics, visuals, and overall atmosphere then, as it's the first thing you get to experience. Like I implied in the intro, I came into this blind, so I didn't know what to expect. You're instantly hit with a beautiful cinematic shot, which partly sets the tone for the beginning of the game. Bright, colourful, peaceful but lively. I could straight away tell that this was going to be a great game to look at and run around in. And I was right. In the beginning, you walk around the populated island of Lumiere, and the atmosphere is brilliant. The buildings look empty as everyone is outside in a celebrative festival, which fits the story that we'll get onto later perfectly. Everything, like I said, was very bright and colourful, and along with that was some perfectly paired music that matched the vibes of the game's intro, of which was juxtaposed towards the end of it, bringing the darker elements of the game into effect. When the game eventually hands you full control, you again get to experience the lovely surroundings. It's very naturistic. The character design is nice as well. It doesn't look weirdly too humanistic or too robotic like other games do. It suits the style, and that's very refreshing to see. Whilst not every word spoken by characters is perfectly synced up to the motions of the mouth, it isn't a problem whatsoever, and doesn't really draw your attention from the other details of the game. A game's graphics, visuals, atmosphere, and more are incredibly important in my opinion, but at the same time, a good game isn't reliant on them. However, it was very nice to experience this, and you could easily tell that time and attention was put into those parts of the game, which is something that I felt whilst playing it. I then had a larger expectation for the rest of the game after that. So, as you can see, I was deeply impressed by the game's overall visual quality and everything related to it. Onto the performance of the game then, and this is obviously the most important part of the game, because if it can't run, no one can play it. When the intro kicked in, I half expected there to be some bumps in performance, as the visuals were very good, but I was weirdly shocked as to how incredibly smooth it was. By the way, I played this on PC, just so you know. The camera movement, the movement of the character, so smooth and satisfying. There's also a lot of floating visuals in the air, and for the amount of detail into this, the performance of which I ran the game at was practically perfect. When I tell you that I experienced literally no glitches, no bugs, no crashes, no nothing. In fact, the only minor thing, if you want to call it that, was when one of the main characters who was following me in the intro could walk through a table. But that did nothing. I'm generally being honest about this, and it annoys me in a way that at the time and right now, I was happy about that. Because we as a community of anyone who buys and plays a game has had to experience such terrible performance in expensive games. That has been done for years now. The fact that mine, and I assume others as well, expectations are so low nowadays, it's very sad. But Expedition 33 has delivered fantastic performance. I truly thank the developers for that. I believe I ran the game somewhere between mid to high graphic settings. When you launch the game, a prompt comes up telling you it's running a benchmark, so I assume that automatically gives you your recommended settings for playing the game, which is useful of course. The game had no issue during walking, running or looking around early on. There was also no problems during cinematic scenes. But what about during combat? Well, we'll get onto the combat later, but as you can probably guess, there was absolutely no problem for me during any combat situation. I generally don't think I have much else to add to this. There was zero problems with performance when I played it, which meant I had no annoying little details to distract me. I could purely focus on the story and gameplay. Yeah, I was extremely impressed by the game's performance quality. Right, the story. I'll try to add as much to this point as possible without really spoiling anything. A reminder that I played this game for around 3 hours. I believe I've spoken about how the very early game and intro is like a chill and vibey kind of way. Maybe I haven't, but that's what it feels like in the early game. You get an easy introduction into the main characters of the game at the beginning, and it's pretty easy to tell what kind of personality they have and what they do. This is important because the story builds around those parts of the characters when the intro of the game is just wandering around the island's festival and interacting with other characters. The game tells you enough to get you invested into what's going on, and into the characters themselves, and does well to induce emotion into you early on, even though you've only just met them. You're aware as to what's going to happen, who the antagonist is, and the motivation and goals surrounding the main character, which is you, and the characters around you, which helps to build an easy to understand story that's also filled with intrigue, mystery, and interest. We don't know why the antagonist does what it does, or the lore behind everything, but you know as you progress you will learn more. So I found the story for myself so far to be very interesting. I don't just want to go back to the game to beat up some enemies, or to look at amazing visuals. I also want to go back to the game to see where the story goes. I am invested. Now obviously it's easier to evaluate a story once it's finished, and I've only gone through the beginning, but I think it will shape up nicely, and I'm sure many others will enjoy it too. The gameplay then. The intro of the game is mostly filled with wandering around the island and interacting with other characters. However, within this you get to fight I think 3 times, with another fight being possible as well, but only if you find that yourself. I'll leave you to that. The first 2 or 3 fights within the intro do a good job of embedding an easy but not annoying tutorial, which teaches you how to fight basically. There's actually an option in the settings to remove tutorial tips or something like that, but I don't see many people doing that. Now, when I first got into the game, I was absolutely not expecting the combat to be a turn-based system, and honestly, I don't mind turn-based games. It obviously depends on the type of game. You just don't see it that often. And well, it was actually really fun. I did not expect it to be that fun, because while it's turn-based, it implements some in real-time action. For example, within fights, you have the ability to dodge or parry depending on the type of attack, and those actions must be executed depending on whether it's a slower or quicker attack. The better you time your dodge or parry, the more damage you can evade. It does the same type thing when you are executing these things called skills, in which, if you are on mouse and keyboard, like me, you'll have to press space at the right time to initiate a perfect attack to increase damage. These are actually incredible additions to what would be a slightly less exciting combat. It doesn't completely take control away from you, and you have a nice range of abilities and variety of attacks you can use depending on the character. Of course, you will find that out as you progress. You can gather a party of characters that can then all fight in your battles, who have different skills. So what can you do then? You have your standard attacks, ranged attacks, then skills and items. In your items, you can heal yourself or allies, revive an ally temporarily. Actually, I think you can do it for a permanent amount. I just think it gives you a low amount of health when you get revived. Or give AP to an ally, which is something that's used to initiate a skill or a ranged attack. The enemies you fight are varied as well, from standard-like ones to bigger giants, and then aerial enemies, which all have a weakness you must find out to exploit and increase your chances of defeating them. I'm sure there'll be even more different enemies to fight as you progress, probably like mini-bosses and story-related bosses. If you've ever played Souls-like games, you'll be able to see small inspiration from them embedded into this game, with things like Flag in the game, which is like a checkpoint where you are safe from enemies. You can rest to regain health and items, as well as things called Chromo Elixirs, which restores all health in your party as well as items, which you would use when there is no flag nearby. You can also increase attributes, of which there is a decent range of them to improve, and you can learn new skills as well, or improve them, which you can add during battles or replace with others. You'll find out if you play the game. You can change your character's clothing depending on if you found any new uniforms. Another thing is that once you kill an enemy and then use a flag, the enemy will respawn again, just like Souls-like games. As for wandering about, when you roam, there are also things like grappling and climbing, which make the journey a bit more exciting and fresh. Along your travels, you can pick up things that will be useful to your characters and your progressions, as well as being able to pick up journals to add some lore and story. Basically collectibles, which is nice. As you can see, there is so much involved within the gameplay that basically makes it impossible for you to get bored. Of course, if you don't really like turn-based combat, then this might not be for you. But for those who are even a bit unsure, it's still really fun. The dodges and parrying, as well as timed damage stackers, are fun as well. So far, I've enjoyed the combat and overall gameplay, and I can't wait to continue. There's plenty to do. I've rounded the game so far now. Well, at least I think I have. Hopefully you understood. The big question, should you buy? The standard edition on Steam is £42. I think that's like $52 for Americans. Now, with the way the market works, or just how game companies like to exploit us because they're greedy, this, in my opinion, is a nice price for the game. Everything I've experienced so far is what you don't get from bigger titles that are priced higher. The performance is amazing. The graphics, visuals, and atmosphere are fantastic. The story seems to be interesting and unique, and the gameplay is also unique, inspired, and surprisingly fun. A lot of games struggle to bring all four. Some games bring nothing at all. This so far is mostly everything for me. I definitely recommend this game to anyone, and would encourage people to give it a try regardless of their interest and skepticism. So, should you buy? Yes, I think you should. Hopefully you enjoy it as much as I am right now. Obviously, make sure you have the right specs and all that other stuff. Well, that's the end of the video then. Make sure to give me your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear anyone else's opinion on the game, whether you've played it or not. I hope you enjoyed watching, and consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It'd mean a lot. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.